Hello, everybody. Welcome back to a brand new episode of The War Room. I am your host, Mike Overton, and joining me this week, I have got a really awesome guest. He's well known as the Wolf 359 Project on social media. It is Andy Poulastides. Welcome to the Clone Star podcast.
Hello there. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you for coming. It's a real privilege to have you here. So,
Yes.
let's start at the beginning. What
Ah.
possessed you to write 152,000 words?
What possessed me to write 152,000 words? Whew. Well, okay, let's rewind back a little bit more, I suppose.
Yep.
I believe I'm of a similar vintage to you. I grew
Yes.
up in the UK in the 80s and 90s, and so one of my kind of formative memories is the cliffhanger at the end of Best of Both Worlds Part One. The Mr. Worf fire, the music, and people who listen to this in the US or who are youngsters and get everything on streaming will never know the 6 months that followed, where it's just like,
What
what
happened?
the hell happened? Like, oh my god, yeah, it was channel BBC Two,
Yep.
6 o'clock, unless it was preempted by the snooker. But that was it for Star Trek, and we didn't have the internet. There was no social media to talk about it. There was no speculation. It was the summer holiday, so I couldn't even really go and talk to mates at school. It was just like living in my head for 6 months, waiting to see what was going to come next. And then finally, we get part two of Best of Both Worlds, and that's just seared into my memory. That shot of the Enterprise passing through the debris field at Wolf 359 and all of those starships, kind of destroyed. So that's lived with me for a while, more years than I care to admit on this podcast. And so we'll skip forward a little bit to that fun period between 2020 and 2021. There was some stuff going on. You might have been there.
Yeah,
Um,
nothing. It was nothing major. It was all
no, it
relatively
was exactly, I
minor
found
things.
myself with a lot of free time suddenly, which was strange. And throughout, I'm like going, I should write this book. I've had this idea in my mind for a long time. I should write this book. I should write this book. I didn't. We got to the end of the whole lockdown period, and then I decided now I will write this book. And so at the end of lockdown, I decided to start my lockdown project, and I reached out to a very good friend of mine, Eric Muirhead, who sadly can't be here tonight, but he was cut from the same cloth. He's in the US, and also, he's a big fan of Star Trek and had written his own kind of fan fiction project. And like me, likes to take this silly little science fiction show and go, yeah, but what if it was real to the insane degrees that I do? And
But
I
we all
pitched
do.
him. Well, absolutely. But I pitched to him. I said, okay, so it's like World War Z, but the Borg, and he was just on board. And then it kind of snowballed from there. And now I get to talk to you. So yeah.
That's an idea, isn't it? World War Z, but with the Borg. There's a lot of leeway there as well, I suppose.
There is, but when you say it, it just kind of makes sense. It just
Yeah.
like, oh, actually, yeah, that's perfect. And I think with the Battle of Wolf 359, it's probably the single most significant event in the history of all of Star Trek. In
Yeah.
fact, I think you can very well look at it and say there is a period of time before Wolf 359 in Star Trek, and then there's the period of time afterwards. It's analogous to things like 9/11 and Pearl Harbor in terms of universe and how the stories are kind of depicted. And I think that also lines up with the sort of period where Gene Roddenberry's health was sort of failing, so he was moving more and more away from the shows. So
Yeah.
they kind of took a much more, I won't say darker or militaristic, but certainly there's a lot more conflict in the shows post Gene Roddenberry being in Star Trek than there were prior to that. And Wolf 359 is kind of like that crux point, to the very fact that the most recent live action Star Trek show, I think it's the most recent, right? Certainly the one before Strange New Worlds, but it still is a huge plot point. It is Wolf 359.
Yeah.
So we
And if it
decided
wasn't for
to.
War 359, we wouldn't have the Defiant, we wouldn't have the Enterprise E,
Nope.
because they were all put to, they were all, built and designed after the events of War 359.
Small point of order. I do believe that the Sovereign class was actually in development before Wolf 359, but certainly afterwards they sort of decided
It was
to.
amped up.
Yes,
It
yes,
was going
exactly.
to
Yes.
be another, it was going, well, I'm gathering it was going to be another Galaxy class. It was going to be lots of spas and classrooms and, things like that.
No, I
And
don't think
then,
it is.
no,
Okay, well, I mean, this is kind
in
of
my
the whole
mind,
thing about.
that's what I think of. It's going to be a
No, you
Galaxy
see, I
class
think
basement.
I think the Sovereign class is actually a response to the David X Warbirds. I think they had the Galaxy class,
Yeah.
this nice shanty hotel, and all of a sudden the Romulans show up on the scene again out of nowhere, and Starfleet suddenly goes, ah, that's bigger than ours, and it has more guns, and we might want to rethink stuff, and that's when I think they started developing the sovereign class. But then the Borg happened, and they go like, we have this plan of this big ship that we're working on. Let's put more guns on it.
Yeah, let's let's
And
let's
yeah.
let's whack quantum torpedoes in there instead.
Yes,
Let's
we're
put them
going
in
to crank it up to 11.
do the spinal tap. Yeah. I'll tell you what, just talking
Yes.
about Galaxy class for a second. I found out a really interesting fact yesterday, and it
Oh yes.
completely blew my mind. Well, if you think back to the TOS movies,
Yes.
their insignia is the old
Hmm.
TOS Delta with a circle around it,
Yes. Hmm.
right? In the next generation, the badge is the Delta shield with an oval in it.
Yes.
Well, the oval is to represent the Galaxy class saucer.
I know.
How
Yeah,
the
it's cool,
hell
isn't
did
it?
I not know that? And it's like, and I've spoken to a couple of other very educated Trekkies, let's go like that.
Hmm.
They didn't know it either.
No, no. I think because it was Mike Okuda did the emblems for
Yeah.
the next generation, and I know he.
Well, I think
I don't
he worked. I don't think they were all him, but yeah, he definitely
know.
worked on them.
But I don't think I don't think we can say for certain that the circle for the movie era insignia is the
No.
saucer of there. But you can definitely say that the saucer in the
Yeah.
TNG ones absolutely is, which is great. It's funny you should mention the Galaxy class. In fact, my next project does involve the
Oh,
Galaxy class,
my
so
favorite
I'm
book.
brushing up on the technical manual.
I'm annoyed that I don't own a physical copy. I have digital copies, but I don't own a
Mm.
physical copy.
Oh, I used to take this into school and sit and read it on my lunch break, which is why I
I
was
do.
such a lonely child.
I do have actually. They were Eagle Moss were doing them recently. They were doing DS9 Voyager and the Enterprise D. They're not technical manuals, but
Mhm.
they're kind of a technical manual, but a bit more of sort of a how
I
can
think
you,
they were called illustrated handbooks,
yeah, they
and
were not quite as in
yeah,
depth. But I mean, I'm quite fortunate that I managed to obtain a copy of Voyager's technical manual that was never published.
yeah. I mean, the thing I
Which
love
is quite a
about this
collection.
technical manual, though, the TNG one, is it treats the Enterprise like it's a real starship.
Yeah,
My favorite bit in here is reading about how that the secondary phaser manifolds were swapped between Yamato and Enterprise because they were a better fit. It's stuff
yeah.
like that I love.
And it's
It's
just yeah,
yeah,
and it's almost like do you remember the old Haynes manual for the Enterprise that they
yes.
did? It's that
Mhm.
on steroids.
Yeah, and that certainly kind of fed into the work we did with 359. It was treating it as if it was a real thing in an event. So we can't just kind of take as read that, oh, this happened because that's just how TV was at the time.
Yeah.
We had to account for stuff like in the debris field. You can see there's the wreckage of a Constitution class starship. Well, we have to account for a Constitution class starship there. Why was that there? So,
So okay, so this was your lockdown project. So
kind of yeah. It'd been living in my head
lockdown
for a while,
project.
but then I
Yeah,
decided to do it. Yeah.
gotcha. So what was your kind of time frame? How long did it take you to actually write it?
I mean, in terms of to write it all, it was probably about 2 years. I mean, it was we kind of knew the rough outline quite early on, but then
Yeah,
it was writing it and revising it. And in addition to myself and Eric, there were kind of three other people who kind of contributed works to it. There's Haimar Dikian, who was also the page designer and did all the wonderful LCARS graphics, if
yeah,
you've seen the PDF of the book. There's John Concoch, who many of you may know from Edge of Midnight, who is a Star Trek historian. He does the I Quit Star Trek podcast, and he's just, a fantastic chap. And then there's Claude Berube, who is the director of the US Naval Academy Museum, who contributed a section as well. Yeah, just as you do. So they all kind of contributed bits to the work as well. But yeah, it's about just under 2 years to get the whole thing from page zero. We actually started writing this the week that the US pulled out of Afghanistan, because that
yeah,
was very much on the news in terms of
yeah.
a big thing happening on the news, and it has a lot of resonance with Eric because he had served there previously.
Right.
So and we kind of fed a lot of that into some of the interviews that we did. Well, I say interviews, but the interviews that we did with characters in there in terms of dealing with traumatic events later on.
Got you. So am I right in thinking that the second edition, which is what is currently available, is 491 pages, if my memory serves me correctly?
Yeah, it's about. I mean, the only difference between the editions are, as people may have been aware, there was a little bit of trouble with Paramount, who asked us very very nicely if we would just swap out a few screen captures that we put in there and swap out a
Yep.
logo. So we've done that. So the second edition is exactly the same as the first
Is the
edition,
one
apart
that
from a couple
Paramount are
of
happy with.
yes, yes. So but yeah, it's about. it's about 500 pages, with a bit of change in there,
Yeah.
all told. And yeah, it's presented in PDF, although you can also get it on archive of our own. Unfortunately, there are no physical copies that we can give out to people. Paramount have been very clear that we cannot offer people physical copies, so they do not exist. Do not ask for them. Sorry.
No, I think that is a shame because this is one of those things that I would love to see printed.
Mm.
Um, I mean, the artwork that goes through here, because you've got there's various artworks, but I want to say, to me, they look like oil paintings.
Oh, so those were done by Steve Johnson, who
Yeah,
is an
I was
amazing
just about to say
artist.
they're Steve's work,
And
aren't they?
my pitch to him was I wanted him to treat them almost like courtroom drawings.
Yeah.
It's almost like he had been given the interview to then kind of transcribe what was in there. So and he did amazing stuff with all of those. I mean, I first found him online on Twitter where he posted these covers for a comic set during the conspiracy episode of Next Generation, with
Yep.
the Blue Girl things, which he still hasn't written. Come on, Steve, write me that book because the artwork's going to be amazing.
Um, Actually, yeah, that would be really cool to see. But anyway, we're diverging a little bit. But yes, just I have to admit, I haven't read it all yet,
Mhm.
yet. And every time, I mean, if I was just to randomly scroll through and pick a page, I'm just genuinely blown away by the sheer amount of, I want to say love and care that's gone into this, because I think it really is love and care that has gone into this.
Oh, there you go.
The shit, the detail of everyone's account is just incredible. But also all of the page designs are beautiful. You've got Klingon UI in there, you've got Borg UI in there. You've got obviously lots of Elcars, which makes me happy to see lots of Elcars. As well as all
We
of
were
these.
thinking of you when we did all that.
Well, to be fair, I hadn't really kind of delved into it at this point. Because yeah, I mean, I've only been going a year. It'll be a year next month.
Hey.
I know, nearly a year. God, how time flies, eh? But yeah, and it's just yeah, I'm just genuinely blown away. So, are there plans to do more?
Are there plans to do more? I mean, I suppose the question is, what do you mean by more? Are
Well, I
there
mean,
plans to do?
okay, are there plans to do more with the Wall 359 project? Because I think that there could be some interesting things that could be done.
So,
With
in
comic
terms of
books.
for ourselves, we might do a little supplemental work, the ships of All 359, because one of the things that I really enjoyed doing was actually kind of giving each ship that was at the battle a name, a class, and a story.
Yep.
And it was a lot of fun. And I think it would be quite fun to flesh those out, maybe as just a little, supplemental book. And I'm speaking with Pundus, the great panda from Singapore, who does all the amazing Starship artworks, about potentially doing some of that. And we might put that out as a community project where you can pick a ship and pitch us the story of that ship and then write that, and then we will kind of collate it all together and put that out. Uh, but yeah, I mean, outside of that, probably not anything 359 itself directly, because I feel we've told all we want to tell. All we could really do is tell more ship logs or
Yep.
individual stories, and I think we kind of have a nice spread over that story. I don't know what we could add. I know a lot of people keep saying to us, when are you going to do the Dominion War? Have you got to understand about the Dominion War is I wrote 500 words on one battle.
500
Okay,
pages.
500 pages on one
Yeah.
battle. Imagine how big the volumes that the Dominion War would have to be. I mean, and until Paramount want to come up to me and actually commission such a work, which we're open to, that's probably going to have to wait on the wayside for the time being. But there are other projects. I'm currently working on a project where I'm I'm currently writing the history of the Galaxy class program, in a sense that it's the gift book you would get at the end of visiting the Enterprise D at the Starfleet Museum. So
That's
it's
awesome.
like the history of the Galaxy class there. And I've been having a lot of fun with that, kind of fleshing out what the various ships did. And also connecting a few things like making the World Razor make sense in the Prime universe. It's very
Yep.
cool. So we're working on that. John's still working on The Edge of Midnight, which is his account of the Klingon Federation Cold War, actual war that is in like Discovery and TOS.
Yep.
High is will be going back to working on the Oniaka 3 project, which is to do with the Borg Reclamation project that Hugh is running. And Eric, I don't think is currently working on anything, but his USS Pershing series, which is about the uh, post-Dominion War reconstruction of Cardassia and everything up
Yep.
until Nemesis, is out there as well. So there's plenty of other things to be getting on with and reading in the meantime. But yes, 359 I think is done for me anyway.
I think the one thing that surprised me, well, I'm going to say it surprised me a little bit. It is page 245,
245. You'd
titled
have to remind me exactly what
Liam
happens on that
Shaw.
page. Ah, yes.
So I'm guessing that that was obviously added in after Picard had aired.
So let me tell you a
Because
story,
I'm
Mike. Let me
really
tell you a
intrigued to
story.
know, because you've kind of fleshed out a decent amount about Liam Shaw over,
Hmm.
I want to say it's 3 pages, isn't it? Yeah, over three
Yeah.
pages. And I'm just intrigued to know how you did that, how you came up with that.
Let me tell you the tale of Liam Shaw in the Battle of War 359. Now, as you know, as someone who hosts a podcast and does reviews, occasionally studios who I want will give you a review copy of a show in advance so you can do it. You know, I'm not
Correct.
saying that you personally, but people are familiar that
Yep.
review
Screeners.
copies are screeners are a thing which exist. And about a month before Picard season 3 dropped, all of a sudden, all these people who knew I'd been working on this project which was, for all intents and purposes, pretty much done, started going to me, Andy, you're going to love Picard. They talk about Wolf 359 on there. It's amazing. You think I'd be excited? Oh, no. Instantly, I'm like,
Shit.
what do? What do? You know, I'm like, are we time traveling? Are we going to see this? Are they going to nullify all of my work here? You know, there was no small amount of because let me tell you something. With a few bits, a few liberties, if you will, with beta canon, we're pretty good with alpha canon. Nothing in there directly contradicts anything that's firmly established. We explain where there's contradictions over which ships survive, be it the Anawahi or the Endeavour or the Hood or what have you. You know, we cover our bases. But all of a sudden, they're talking about Wolf 359. No one would tell me what it was. They would just tell me Wolf 359 is mentioned. So we get to the episode, and then there's the first episode where they introduce that computer virus that was supposedly on the Enterprise
Yeah.
in Best of Both Worlds, which is not there and makes no sense and was just irritating. So I wrote that out with a paragraph and I was like, okay, that's fine. I could relax. I could relax at that point. But then we got to the third episode and we get that magnificent speech from Todd Stashwick as Shaw,
Yeah.
where he gives this monologue. And it was just like, oh my God, this is absolutely amazing. I mean, it's basically just taken straight out of a book and has made it flesh. But we were like, we knew in that moment we had to include something for sure.
Yeah.
And I will give all my credit to Eric Muirhead, my co-writer, who is a serving U.S. Army officer, and he wrote that pretty much in an afternoon, and he just pulled on his experiences of knowing enlisted personnel who had served in places like Iraq and in Afghanistan. He could pull on that lived experience, and he knocked that out in like an afternoon, and it was just like, okay, we're good. We'll just drop that in there. You know, we just took the bones of what you know Shaw had said on screen and just fleshed it out, just padded out the sides a little bit of color with the idea of
Yeah.
Chicago and drop that in there. And yeah, it's a great little sequence, but it was definitely one of those clench moments. And at that point, it's like, please don't do anything more with 359 in this
I
show,
don't
just
want
so
to
we
add
can get
any
the
more
book
to my
out.
book.
No, make it stop. But yeah, we got it done, and we're pretty happy with that. Yeah, like I said, for the most part, we're pretty good with canon.
Yep.
Anytime the biggest complaints we've had in terms of canon have been the suggestion, the audacity that the Akira class starship might predate Star Trek First Contact. How dare we?
Oh,
But that's like the biggest pushback we've had is well, that and the Parliament class ship. But you know, it's like, for one thing, there's a subset of a community which doesn't seem to have image permanence and the idea that something can exist before you see it for the first time.
really? Oh, do you know what? I would never have guessed that at all,
Mm,
ever, that
yeah.
something could exist before it's seen.
But I stand by my choices, and I feel I explained the Akira class in the book well.
Yep. Oh, you definitely on that one. Definitely on that one.
Hmm.
Um,
The other, again, just
go on.
the other bit, the bit we were kind of most worried about when we were coming this out is we know that one ship survived out of the 40, which was at Wall 359
Yep.
from the Drumhead episode. So we had to make a decision over which ship would survive. And the thing about the Hood is everyone will turn around to you if you say, you know, and I can go and post a picture right now on Facebook and just say USS Hood Survival 359. 200 comments all telling me I'm wrong. Straight away, guarantee. That came out because it's referenced in, I believe, the autobiography of Jean-Luc Picard and a couple of other books that the Hood was there.
Yep.
Served at War 359. But traditionally, I think the Star Trek Encyclopedia states it was the USS Endeavour survived, mostly because Janeway reads a log entry from a Captain Amazov, so that must be it. Or the Unhawaii because it appears on their card. A lot of people, will take issue with me suggesting the Hood survived. But the reason we made the Hood the survival of 359 is because it's got such an interesting parallel story to Star Trek. It's the very first starship besides Enterprise you see in Next Generation.
Yep.
Riker and Geordi both served on the ship prior. And when you first meet Captain DeSoto, and it's his one episode with in Tin Man, instantly this is like a really likable. You want to know this guy. He's like an interesting.
He could have his own show. Yeah.
Well, basically, yeah. And so, for the purposes of the story, I thought it was much more interesting to follow that ship and that character than another ship that was just no particular resonance there. And I feel justified that later on we see the Hood is in the Dominion War. It's shown in Lower Decks. Yeah. And then there's that one episode where Nog and Jake have to kind of trade favors to get a thing. And one of the things he has to do is take a picture of Cisco's desk. And he references that this guy has DeSoto's desk as part of his collection. Now, who is taking the picture of the guy who just hauls his ass between space stations? No one is. Okay. If you want your picture taken in that desk, he's done something worthwhile. So there you go.
Exactly.
So I come with receipts.
Yeah, exactly. So what was one of your biggest challenges for them with putting the book together?
I mean, the biggest challenge is probably just trying to. There's 60 years of history, and writers who have written this story are not as obsessed about the details as we are. I mean, the single biggest challenge I had writing this book was Star Trek Voyager, who every other week dropped in some new bit of Voyager Borg lore or 359 lore, just because, that was the biggest challenge where, you think you got a good handle on the story and everything's fine, and someone says, well, yeah, but they mentioned something in Survival Instinct. It's like, they do. I've got to go home and watch the entire episode to find it, and it's like, God damn it. But it was trying to weave that narrative thread where it all made sense and it all kind of came together. And we actually kind of surprised ourselves in how well it does come together in some places. Like we introduced this idea that, so again, small spoiler if you haven't read the book, but the book's been out for a year. So sorry, Mike, but I'm going to do this. We have a subplot that there was a Romulan ship following the Borg from Romulan space through the Federation, spying on what the Borg were doing, just intelligence gathering. And the reason why there's only 40 starships at War 359 isn't because that's all the ships they can muster. What they were trying to do is they were trying to make this star go nova. They were trying to blow up the star to destroy the Borg to stop it happening. The 40 ships were just there to monitor and maybe clean up afterwards. Yep. It all goes very wrong. But then we were like, well, the Romulans are there, and maybe they saw that and started getting ideas. So they go over, get the information, take this information back home. They start playing with trilithium, the connection to generations, why the Romulans are there dealing with so on. And then later on, they accidentally blow up their own sun. Mm-hmm. It all starts coming together. We also see like the Romulans have the artifact. They have this Borg cube there. There's an entire backstory between the Romulans and the Borg, which is fascinating. And it was just...
We don't actually know where the artifact came from, do we?
Yeah. Really? We do not. Well, they mentioned that...
They've hinted at things.
In Picard Season 1, they say that the Borg... they assimilated a Romulan ship and it basically broke the brain of that cube and then it was abandoned. And we fleshed some of that stuff out in the book there. But, if you recall in the 2009 film, The Narada, that's, if you read the background comic, that's supposed to be filled with Borg tech and all that. So there's this whole through line with the Borg and the Romulans that we wanted to explore a little bit in there. And we kind of just connect these dots and pull this web where it just all came together. And it was just like, damn, I love it when a plan comes together.
What is your favorite part of the book? And it can be an illustration, it could be a quote, it could be an entire chapter.
My favorite part of the book isn't necessarily a part of the book. It's the reaction I've had to the book.
Yeah.
And this is going to make me sound like some sort of sadist, but it's not the case. But it's the amount of people I've made cry reading the book. Like I've had people who've told me that I mean, when I was writing this, I'd give it to my wife to just kind of read through some stuff when she was going to from work, and she'd come home and give me shit because she'd find herself crying on the tube because she'd been reading a bit and she got upset. Annie, Eric's wife, who did a lot of the proofreading, would she still gives me shit because there's a particular character that I kill, and every time she's like, I know he's going to die, and I don't want them to die. Um, and there's just one. We have interviews with Jake Sisko in there, and you get
Yep.
to the end of one of them where Jake talks about how he can't remember what his mum smells like, and he just wishes he can hug his mum. And everyone who reads that one, there's not a dry in a room. And I think that's probably what I'm kind of most proud of is the fact that it's had such a visceral connection with people
Yeah.
that it has affected them like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably what I'm most proud of.
And if you had to do it all over again,
Mhm.
what would you do differently?
What would I do differently? I don't know if I would do anything differently with the book. I think what's a real shame these days is you used to be able to take a project like this to Paramount or to Simon and Schuster or what have you, and
Yep.
they were much more receptive to fan submissions for works to do things, and that apparatus just doesn't exist anymore.
No.
And I think the one thing I would like to be different is I would have loved for this to be an official project. I would have loved for this to be something that you could go and
Yep.
have a physical copy of, but there's just no way for you to do that unless you are already an established author, or if you're already inside the the uh the sphere that is the Paramount machine. And I think that's a real shame because so many of the great writers, I mean, Ron Moore wouldn't get his start today if it wasn't for fan submission works.
Yep.
Una McCormick wouldn't be writing the work that she's doing without that fan submission side of things now. And it's a huge shame, but that's kind of my biggest regret there is the fact that we can't make this official and put it in front of people because there's just the mechanisms just aren't in place to do that.
Yeah. No. And I think but I think that's the way of the world now for a lot of things. It's not necessarily just Star
Mhm.
Trek, but there's a lot of things where they just don't have the time or the resource to sit there and sift through, pitches and all of this kind of thing. Which is a shame because yes, as you're right, if that is how some of the best sci-fi authors got started.
It is, but I don't think there's anything wrong with it not being official. I mean, Star Trek contradicts itself constantly.
Yep.
In within its own within the with its own series, it will contradict itself. And our take on the Battle of Wolf 359 is no more or less valid than say JTVFX's one on YouTube, which is absolutely amazing. I love that animation.
Yep.
Uh, or any other version. We're not the be all and end all, but we wanted to tell this story, and that is how it is. And
Yeah.
the nice thing is it is there free for anyone to go and read. You can go and download it and have a read and just enjoy it.
So if somebody does want to go and read it, where can they read it?
Well, you can go and read it at wolf359project.com. It's an amazing website, beautifully
Yep.
designed. The webmaster should definitely get a raise there. It's also on Archive of Our Own, AO3. If you just search for We Have Engaged the Borg or Project, Wolf 359 Project, you'll find it everywhere. It's on social medias and stuff. I dare say you may even put notes in the show notes below of where you
Yep.
can find these
It will
links.
be linked in the description of this video for sure.
Yes.
Um, awesome. Well, I have one last question to ask you.
Okay.
It takes no thinking whatsoever. It's super,
Okay.
super easy. Andy, what does
Yes.
Star Trek mean to you?
What does Star Trek mean to me? Star Trek to me means stories.
Stories.
It means stories. It means stories. If I could steal from one of the other great science fiction shows of all times, we're all just stories in the end. So let's make it a good one.
Yeah.
And I think that's at its core of it. I love again. I just showed you. I've got the Star Trek technical manual. I love obsessing about plasma manifolds and Heisenberg
Yep.
constantes. But what attracts me to Star Trek and all science fiction are the stories that we tell within it.
Yes.
And so compelling stories is what Star Trek means to me.
That's awesome. I've never thought of it that way before. I like that one a
Oh,
lot.
you're welcome.
Um, so just want to very quickly say thank you for my gift.
Oh, you're welcome.
Um, and yes, make sure you check out wolf359project.com. It's a great
Oh, I
site.
tell you what. one thing very quickly. So I'm not entirely sure when this will be dropping. So
Well,
this is either news for the future or news for the past. But we are currently working on an audio adaptation of the book. That is
ooh,
in progress right now. A very, very talented individual, Stephen Van Doren, is producing this work, and it is a community project in that anyone can put forward an audition to read for one of the characters in there. I can tell you, we've already got some pretty exciting voices lined up in the story. And it's going to be released for free as a podcast series, most likely, where you'll get a different interview each week as they go along. It'll go on all the socials and everything once we know all that. But yes, that's a very exciting thing. But if you want to listen to it, you can do that. But if you want to be part of it, uh, definitely send a message to Stephen Van Doren with your audition, as it were, and then you can be part of the story. You can tell your story.
that's really cool. Okay, you will definitely get an audition from me at some point then on that one.
I'm
Um,
expecting you to do your best Riker, okay?
yeah, I don't think I'm gonna get my leg high enough. Um, so Andy, if people want to reach out to you, where is the best place to get hold of you?
I mean, if you want to reach me on the social medias, I'm still circling the drain on the Bird site because
I
everyone
think
else
everyone is,
is.
to be fair. A lot of people say,
We're
"Oh,
just.
I'm leaving," and I've only ever seen one person leave.
Hmm.
Um, and that's it. Yeah. So
Well, it's Wolf 359 project on all the social medias and everything. My personal one is Andy3E. That's Andy number three and then the letter E,
awesome.
which you can find on all those places as well. But yeah, Discords and stuff. But I'm an old man. I don't know how Discords work. Someone just set up a Discord for me, and now it's there, and I talk to people on it.
To be fair, I'm the same. I have a Discord server, and I have no idea what to do with it half the
Yeah,
time. So,
exactly. It's just
um, awesome. Well, Andy, thank you so much for joining me this week. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching to this episode. Make sure you check out our website, clonestarpod.com, for the latest news, reviews, episodes, and as well, we have a awesome new line of show merch which has just dropped with War Room t-shirts and 10 Forward t-shirts as well. Until next time, live long and prosper.